Hello and welcome to this info boxing for Subterra, a cooperative survival horror game from Inside the Box Games. This was on Kickstarter a while back, now available on retail on Zatu's website. It's a brilliant game for 1 to 6 players where you are exploring a cave, essentially just trying to find your way out before the time runs out. Let's have a look to see how it plays. There are 8 characters to choose from at the start of the game. The leader has the ability to direct other players for less actions than they'll be able to do it themselves, and they have a passive ability to add one roll, one number, one pip to each of their rolls. You roll dice for skill checks. I'll show that later. All boards are double-sided, so as you become au fait with the rules a little bit, you can move over to this side where the icon will show you what you're doing rather than the text that gives you a little bit more detail. I'll show you a few of the other ones. The medic has the ability to heal other players, as you could imagine, a little bit easier than they'd be able to do themselves, as well as a sprint action, which lets them move across the board quicker than the other players. Again, double-sided with easy iconography once you get used to that. Two of my favourite characters, the engineer, they have the ability to demolish down walls. So if you're stuck on a corner or can't get through a particular wall or need to get to another player or the exit quickly, the engineer has the ability to blow those walls down. They can only do this 3 times each turn, and what they use is these pieces here where they blow up the wall and then show that there has been a cut through made in that particular part of the cave. Another really cool power is the diver, who has the ability to move from one flooded tile to another. I'll show you how the tiles become flooded later. There's also the climber, the scout, the geologist, and the bodyguard. So lots of choice here, some really cool powers. All of it is very easily explained on both sides of the board, as I said. The idea of the game is very simple. Move through the cave and find the exit before the time runs out. It really is that simple. So you start on this starting tile, as I explained, and you will open up multiple different parts of the cave as you reveal tiles and lay them down in a simple tile placement mechanic. Some tiles you turn up will simply be extra pathways to move down, expand in new areas of the cave. Others, however, will open up a lot more surprises and dangers. One of such are the gas areas. These are parts of the cave where there is dangerous gas in them. Moving into them isn't necessarily dangerous, but when that gas becomes active, then if you're in that area when that happens, then you will start losing health. Other areas will show rough terrain. When you enter these tiles, cavers have to immediately take a skill check. If they fail, they start to lose life. There are ledge tiles such as this, where players have to put a rope to get up or down the particular ledge once that's done. Placing a rope takes up 2 actions and again involves a skill check. Water tiles start in an unflooded state when you flip them over, and they're treated just like any other tile. However, when the flood hazard card is resolved, then you have to add a flood marker token to them. At this point, each caver on these tiles will start to lose a health, but you also cannot enter any flood markers on them except by using the swim action, which takes up all of your actions for that turn. This tile represents a cave-in hazard. When this is resolved, you have to throw the dice. As you can see for this particular tile, if you were to throw a 4 or a 6, then you would add the cave-in function. Again, if you're on this tile when this will happen, you would lose your health. In this case, all of your health. You also cannot enter these tiles when there's a rubble marker on them. You can dig through them, but this takes up your dig action, which is all of your actions for a particular turn. This tile represents the squeeze action. Cavers cannot enter these tiles using the normal move action. Instead, you have to squeeze through, which again is using all of your actions for a particular turn. If the squeeze tile is placed as part of an explore, which I'll detail in a moment, you can still move through the tile as normal. This is an opportunity to take a risk and get into an area without first knowing what it is you're about to enter into. This is the horror tile. When the hazard card for the horror action is resolved, then a horror is spawned on this particular tile. Horrors are represented by this token here. They move and chase after the nearest caver. If they ever move onto the same space as you, you will lose all of your life immediately. This is the slide tile, similar to the ledge tile. However, the slides have to be placed such that the arrow is pointing away from the caver. Cavers can enter this tile in a normal way, but they cannot move back across the slide unless a rope has been placed there. All of which is this leading up to you trying to find the exit tile, which is shuffled randomly into the bottom 5 tiles. So you never know quite when it's going to come, but you do know that you need to get through most of the tiles in order to find this. So you'll be sprawling through tunnels, winding your way through the cave, trying to find this exit point. If all cavers get to this exit point before the time runs out, then you are successful. Playing the game is very easy. There's 4 phases, the first of which is the action phase, where you have multiple choices of which to do. All are very simple, but you have these basic action cards in front of you to remind you for your first few plays. The first one is to simply reveal a card, have a look at a card and see what that is and if you want to place it. A second option is for any tiles that are already laid later in the game, is to just move 1 space through them. The next option is the explore and reveal, which is what you will be doing early on in the game pretty much for every one of your turns, which is where you take over a new tile, place it and move into it, no matter what that is. It's a much more efficient way because essentially you're having 2 turns in one go. It's just dangerous because it could be that you're revealing something that is dangerous to you. For both of your actions, you can move 3 spaces on any tiles that are already laid out, although bear in mind you will still have to pay the consequences of any tiles that have hazards in them. You can also heal yourself for both of your actions. That can be yourself or any other neighbouring player on the same tile as you, unless of course you're the medic using the medic function. The hazard actions are, as we talked about, to swim through a flooded tile, to squeeze through a narrow space, to dig through a tile that has been caved in, hide from the horror monsters, that's one thing you can do if they're coming too close to you, or to add a rope to either a ledge or a slide, making that space accessible for you and other cavers for the rest of the game. Once all players have taken their turn, the action phase is over and you move into the horror phase. This is simply a time when all horrors that have already been laid onto the tiles due to the hazard phase will move 1 step closer towards their closest victim. You then move to the end phase, where the starting caver marker is passed 1 caver to the left and play continues. If at any point for any reason you lose all of your health, then you will become unconscious and you must turn your caver over onto their side. This represents a caver who has fallen and needs help from their friends. Unconscious cavers cannot perform any actions and they will essentially be passive until a neighbouring caver comes onto the same space as them and gives them some help. All of it would be relatively simple were it not for the hazard phase, which happens once all players have taken all their actions and any horrors previously spawned have moved 1 space. In the hazard phase, you reveal the top card of the hazard deck and resolve this card's effect. All of these cards are bad. In this case, a new horror is spawned. Here, you would have a cave in and any cavers on that space will lose their health. The gas, again, will affect the health of any cavers on any tile that has the gas icon on that. Flood will do so on any tile where there is a flood icon. Finally, the tremor tile will affect all conscious cavers no matter where they are. Everyone has to perform a skill check, losing life if they fail. You go through the deck until you reach the final out of time card, at which point, if you're not at or at least 1 move away from the end, you pretty much are going to die. I talked a lot about different cards and tiles requiring skill checks. Skill checks are very simple. You just simply roll this die. If you roll a 4, 5 or 6, you succeed. If you roll a 1, 2 or 3, then you fail. The consequences of succeeding or failing will very much be dependent upon the action that you're doing. But the interesting thing with this dice, as you can see, is that it glows in the dark. A lot of the tiles have this special effect on them that gives them this glow in the dark effect. I'm not sure how often I'll play in the dark, but nonetheless, it's a very cool effect, I think, for the game. Subterra is such a fun game. It's so tense when you're playing it. If you've played any tile laying game like Carcassonne before, you'll be pretty much au fait with how this game works. You're just flipping tiles over and connecting them. You know what is legal and what's not. You can't have a dead end and walls going into walls and things like that. It's really simple to pick up and play. Cooperative games are always really fun. It gives you the opportunity to play with players of different ages and abilities, and as long as someone doesn't try and take over and quarterback everything, you're going to have a lot of fun. There's a lot of choice with the characters. The powers that they have are really fun. It's fun to try out different ones. There's a lot of replayability just in the characters that you've got there. Of course, the tiles can come out in any random order, and there's a lot of tiles here, over 60 odd. So the space and the layout and the cave that you explore is going to be obviously different each time. The components are really nice. They have these tokens that are really pretty much pointless, but they just help remind you if the gas is in effect, or if the horror is on the board, you need to activate them if you turn over the horror card. There's just every little thought has been put into this game. The pieces that you use to put over the tiles when the flood happens or the cave-in happens, they're really nice pieces. Components wise, anything I don't really like is the horror token. It would have been nice if that was some kind of little miniature or standee or meeple or something, instead of just a disc with a claw mark on. That seems a little dull and lose the theme a little bit, but the rest of the game really is dripping with the theme. The art on the tiles is a little dark. I think that's obviously the point. You're in a cave, it's dark, and they've done these things with the little fluorescent elements. Apparently if you put it under a black light, I don't have a black light to test it, but if you put these under a black light, they shine up. But like the dice, when are you going to be using the black light? When are you going to be playing in the dark? It seems a little pointless, but a nice touch nonetheless. Doesn't seem to have affected the price of this game by a significant amount. But yeah, the tiles are a little dark. If you're playing in low light, you are going to have to pick them up and have a look closely, especially if you're an older player such as myself. But ultimately, it's thematic. There is a point to it. They haven't done that for no reason. The game is really fun to play. It's on a counter with the tiles, the cards that you're using, obviously, and you can set that difficulty to whatever the ability that you have or how hard you want to make the game. So I can see myself coming back and playing this game quite a lot. It's a really fun step up from the simple tile layer mechanic that you get with games like Carcassonne, as I said, but adds a little bit more tension to it, a little bit more of a gripping theme and story to the game. And being a co-op game, unlike Carcassonne, obviously it's going to be a great one to play with people of different levels, as I mentioned. Overall, I'd highly recommend this game. I think it's a really fun thing. It'll be interesting to see what else these guys put out. There's some really cool expansions for this game already out that I'm keen to try, and I'd urge you to have a look at those as well. So that's Subterra. Really fun game, highly recommended. Thank you for watching.